Here we go. Thank you. Welcome to the Dennis from Scratch Q&A show, where life gets busy and it takes me like 4 weeks to make an episode. Anyway, the first question today comes from Sammy H. She says, or is it maybe a he? Yeah, because Sammy could be a boy too. They said, thoughts on taking a DHA supplement or fish oil during pregnancy? Or just try and get a couple of servings of fish weekly? Question mark. I like the way you're thinking. So overall, I always like to get nutrition from food before supplements. Food before supplements. Because all nutrition originally comes from food, so why not get it straight from the source? Cut out the middleman. So even though I like to get nutrition from food, right, from the source, you want to be careful when you're picking out fish, because right now, a lot of fish are contaminated with high levels of mercury from all the manufacturing pollution that's just thrown into the ocean. And then on top of that, you've got fish farms, which are packing fish into small, tight areas. So you want to avoid all that. There's basically a few types of fish that are safe for pregnancy because they've got relatively low mercury levels. And those are, I would say, focus on wild-caught Alaskan salmon, specifically Alaskan salmon, because salmon from other areas, Atlantic salmon and stuff, might have higher mercury levels. But wild-caught Alaskan salmon is pretty good. Wild-caught shrimp or other small shellfish and shrimp and stuff are really, really high in a lot of nutrients that are important for pregnancy. So go for those, that's a really good option. And because they're so small, they don't build up high mercury levels over their whole lifetime. So even if you get them from the Atlantic Ocean where there's a lot of mercury pollution, you should be okay because they're so small. So in addition to eating fish a couple times a week, I would recommend supplementing, not necessarily with a DHA supplement, but with high quality cod liver oil. And the reason for that is because if you look at the primitive or the traditional diets of indigenous peoples, and you look at what the women, especially the pregnant women and the children ate, the tribes and stuff would set aside the fish organs, like the livers and stuff, for the women and children because that is the most nutrient-packed part of the fish. So right now in our society, we can't really get, cod livers, right? The closest thing we can get is the cod liver oil. And if you get a high quality version of the cod liver oil, you're gonna get most of those nutrients. I haven't done a whole lot of research on cod liver oil to find the best of the best of the best, but a really good solid brand is called Standard Process. We take some of their supplements, and our chiropractor actually was the one who introduced us to this brand. So I'll put their cod liver oil in the description for you to use if you want that. My wife Abby isn't currently taking this, but when we have the budget for it, we're gonna add it into her regimen as well. Question 2 comes from Rebecca Russell. I wonder if she has any relation to Dennis Russell to me. I mean, maybe not. Anyway, nepotism is great. She says, here's a quick tip for anyone trying hard to avoid MSG. I'm highly sensitive to MSG. I get a migraine anytime I eat it. I've discovered that I will often get a migraine after eating savory foods that have natural flavors, whereas I've never gotten a migraine from sweet food that has natural flavors in it. Maybe it's just a coincidence, but what do you think, Dennis? Is MSG more often in savory natural flavors than sweet? Well, I would just like to say it's very refreshing to see a proper usage of the word whereas. Also, your grammar is wonderful. I wonder where you learned it all. Yes, you are right. So MSG is a flavor enhancer that has a slightly salty taste, which means that it's more often going to be used in foods that are savory or salty and not sweet foods. If you're sensitive to MSG and you're trying to avoid it, it goes by so many names, it can be really difficult, but the most common names that I've seen for MSG, they will list it as monosodium glutamate, natural flavors, spices, meat tenderizer, and there's so many more. There's like 21 different things that it can be called. Sometimes they don't even need to list it in the ingredients because it's used in some other product that they put into their product, and they don't need to label everything that was in the original product. So like, brands can get around ingredient labels. They don't have to list all of the ingredients. There's ways around it. So if you are really sensitive to a preservative or to MSG, or just if you want to be healthy in general and you want a clean diet, you have to make it yourself or choose brands that you really, really trust. But one more thing I want to mention is that being sensitive to MSG and to other chemicals is not bad. Oftentimes what happens is these chemicals are bombarding us so often that our bodies just become desensitized to them, and our body starts to just not react when we consume those things. So the fact that you're reacting to MSG by getting a migraine might actually be a healthy thing. It's just your body's way of saying, something went wrong, I received something that I can't process, don't do that again. Question 3 comes from Brooke Beery. She says, "Hey Dennis, my partner and I discovered we are pregnant last week, and it was a bit of a surprise, so I'm trying my best to educate myself quickly. I am 8 weeks along and I'm taking the Baby and Me Too vitamin with the Honest Company's DHA pill twice a day, 10 milliliters of floradix liquid iron, and 2 vitamin D gummies at 2,000 IUs. I'm also adding magnesium soft chews as soon as my delivery arrives. Since I have trouble swallowing pills, there have been days when I'm unable to get the Baby and Me Too pills down. On those days, I take the Ritual prenatal vitamin because I have some extras hanging around in a bottle. They're citrus flavored and easy to take, but they're expensive and don't seem as nutrient packed. Can you offer any suggestions or tips for me? I'm doing my best to eat whole foods like eggs, sweet potatoes, kale and quinoa salads, yogurt with fresh berries, avocados, chicken and beef. But I'm concerned I'm getting too much of a certain vitamin or messing up my nutrition on those days when I take 1 Baby and Me Too and 1 Ritual prenatal. Another thing, before I discovered I was pregnant, I wasn't taking prenatals and I was using topical Retin A on my face every night. Of course, I stopped using it as soon as I learned the news, but I'm worried about potential damage from the Retin A skincare during the first 7 weeks of development. I know you touched on vitamin A and retinol a little bit. Do you know of any research pointing to a specific cause and effect relationship between fetal development and topical vitamin A use, especially during early pregnancy? All the best, Brooke Beery." Brooke, sounds like you're experiencing a little bit of anxiety right now, and that's understandable. So I just want to say first off, you're doing great. In a perfect world, all of the responsibility of finding good products and healthy ways to raise your child would not fall on you and your partner. But right now, our world's pretty messed up, and it pretty much does. Companies and the government should be assisting us and regulating how they make their products to make sure that it's safe for people who are pregnant and early development. But that's just not the case. So if something goes wrong, it's not your fault. You're doing the best that you can do, and just take comfort in that. You're taking your parenting responsibilities seriously, and that is a very good thing. You are a good parent. And no matter what happens from here on out, your baby is a blessing to you right now. So focus on that and on the joy of being pregnant. Now on to your questions to answer a few of those. So, food first, supplements second. I said it earlier, but I'm saying it again. You are doing really well on diet. The things that you mentioned sound really good. A couple tips to improve your diet even more. Make sure you're focusing on organic produce. Non-organic fruits and vegetables are processed with chemical fertilizers that demineralize the soil, and so basically they don't really have much nutrition. But organic produce is going to be much more nutritious, and you're probably just going to overall feel better when you're eating organic fruits and vegetables. And then as far as the meat is concerned, if you can find a good quality, like local farmer who can get you some good quality beef and chicken and stuff, that's your best option. But if you can't get a small local farmer to produce your meat, then just getting organic meat at the store is a good option too. I also mentioned it earlier answering Sammy's question, but make sure you're focusing on eating fish, because fish is going to be really, really good for your baby's development. And also focus on eating beef. These two are going to be powerhouses when it comes to nutrition, and you're going to get a lot of nutrients from them. I mentioned earlier eating fish livers for the most nutrition. If you can stomach it, eating a serving of beef liver each week is going to be really, really good for your baby's development. If you can't stomach it, I actually was hiding liver like in meatloaf or something when I was making it for my wife when she was pregnant in the early stages, and that worked for her. But then also it got to the point where just even a little bit of liver would make her sick. So what we're doing right now is she's taking a liver supplement from Ancestral Supplements, a really good quality brand, and I'm gonna link that in the description for you. As far as the supplements you mentioned, most of them seemed pretty good. I would probably avoid the Ritual Prenatal and see how you feel, because there were some questionable ingredients in there. Plus, like you mentioned, it just didn't seem to be very nutrient packed. I'd rather your body absorb more of the nutrients from your food versus competing with the Ritual Prenatal's nutrients, because they just didn't seem as absorbable. And don't be afraid to experiment by removing or adding one supplement at a time and just seeing how you feel. Try it out for a few days or a week, and if you feel like you're doing better without it or with it, then keep that and try something else. Just experiment and see how you feel. As for the Retin A face cream, I don't have any specific studies to point you to, but I have heard a lot of testimony from people talking about side effects that they had from products like that. So I'm glad that you stopped using it. As far as what you should do now, because you were taking it, probably when you're pregnant, just don't worry about it. So you've stopped using it, and don't try and detox right now, because you have a baby growing in you and that should take your priority. You don't want to do a lot of detoxes when you're pregnant, because sometimes that can have negative effects on the baby. Just focus on getting proper levels of vitamin D, especially from sunshine and eating fish, because that's going to help balance your body's level of the retinol and the vitamin D, which need to be balanced. Retinol in its proper form is not dangerous, and it's actually good for you, right? It's just vitamin A. But the face creams, they have a synthetic form and it's just too concentrated, so it can cause toxicity. So at this point, just try and reduce your baby's toxic exposure as much as possible, because that's really the best thing you can do for them when they're developing and when they're growing and when they're an adult. Like, just reduce your toxic exposure as much as possible, and that's really gonna help your baby develop well. And question 4 comes from Charlie G. He says, "Didn't know a salad spinner is worth a review, but this is a nice surprise. Love the review and subscribed to your channel after watching it. Looking forward to more content from you." Why were you watching a video about a salad spinner? That sounds insanely boring. I mean, I made one, but I didn't expect anybody to watch it. But you did a good thing by subscribing. So I'm gonna overlook everything else and just congratulate you on your wisdom. I think we could all take a lesson from Charlie's wisdom and subscribe to the channel. So, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, that's about it.